We've all been there. We've presented a design to a client, super proud of our work, super excited to get it out into the world and into our portfolio, only for the client to request revisions to the design that we know are not conducive to the goals of the project and or just downright don't look good. What do you do? How do you save the project? In this video, I'm going to share 2 examples based on my own real projects, one branding project and one web design project, when my clients requested counterproductive design edits and I was able to talk them away from those ideas and get them on board with my recommendations. Before we go any further, I do want to call out my free Freelance Essentials email series, which is linked in the video description below. If you're constantly running into hiccups with your design clients, you'll definitely want to sign up for this. You'll get 1 email a day for 5 days with a tip on how to work better with your clients and strengthen your freelance design business. Now let's get into it. Let me first say that it's important to remember that the client is not a designer. They don't do this work every day like you do. So sometimes it's easy to feel frustrated when the client doesn't understand our design recommendations and asks for quote unquote bad edits, but we need to take a moment to breathe and know that the client is not trying to argue, they're not trying to derail the project, they're just sharing their feedback, which they have the right to do as the person paying you for the design. At the same time, when this happens, it raises so much concern for us as designers because we want our design work to help the client's business be successful. We want it to help them move towards their goals. And we also want it to look good in our portfolio, perhaps a little bit selfishly. We don't want to have a project out in the world that doesn't do a good job of showcasing our skills and expertise. And before I share the 2 examples, I need to also let you know that these are based on my real projects with my real clients, though I am adjusting the specifics of both situations in order to protect my clients' identities and respect my clients. I never want my clients to feel like I am making fun of them or not understanding their feedback, and hopefully you don't want your clients to think that either. Both of the projects that I'm talking about in this video were done with clients that I absolutely love. So let me share my first example. I worked with a really wonderful web design client a while back who wanted a full screen photo at the top of their website homepage. Now, at a first thought, this might seem like, okay, whatever. This is a really common thing to do on a website. But because of my knowledge of web accessibility, I paused when I heard this because we also needed to have text at the top of the homepage on top of that photo above the fold. Web accessibility standards require that there is enough contrast between the text and the background in order for the text to be legible. And the photo that the client wanted to use was very busy. It had a lot of variation of dark and light areas, and it wasn't easy to read text on top of that photo. So not only was this a poor user experience, but it didn't meet accessibility standards. Now, when navigating this feedback, I used my methods outlined in my previous video about what to do when a client asks for bad edits. First, I needed to understand why they wanted this photo to be full screen. Why couldn't it just be next to the text? Why did they feel that this was the best thing for their business? And it turned out that the client really wanted to showcase people in action. They wanted to showcase the impact of their work, and they wanted to get people excited about working with them. And they wanted the photo to be full screen because it felt stronger and bolder than a photo next to the text. And they were very adamant about this, so I wanted to make it work. I first presented a design that showed the photo with the text on top of it and a slightly transparent box behind the text. I thought this solution was best for accessibility as well as for getting that striking full screen photo at the same time. Unfortunately, the client was not crazy about this, so I went on to my next step of showing them their suggestion next to my recommendation and explaining why my recommendation would be best. So yes, I actually did show the client the text on top of the photo with no background behind the text, and I showed them how it made the text difficult to read and that it didn't meet accessibility standards and did not provide a good user experience in general. It was really important for the client to see this for themselves. If I had just said, no, I'm not listening to your feedback, I'm not doing what you asked, they would have felt like I wasn't open to their ideas and they weren't having a very good experience with the person that they paid to make something for their business. So in this case, the client ended up still really liking the look of the unobstructed photo. They really did not like the box on top of it with the text on top of that. So at this point, I needed to do the thing that I talked about in another previous video and compromise. I needed to take their instructions, their boundaries for the design and make it work. As design experts, this is a puzzle that we sometimes need to solve with our creative thinking brains. What I ended up doing was lightening one side of the photo enough that dark text could still be legible on top of it, but you could still see the photo a bit through the lightened area. This was a good compromise that gave the client what they wanted, but also met accessibility standards and ensured that we could have that clear, informative text above the fold, which was also very important. I also want to note that I also shared articles and information about web accessibility guidelines with the client in order to help them understand why ultimate legibility of the text was important so that they would know that I wasn't doing this just because of my opinion, but because of real accessibility requirements. And so with this project, we both walked away happy with the results. For my second example, I'll talk about a branding project. I once worked with a wonderful, inspiring client who worked in the health and nutrition industry on their logo design and branding. And in our initial project kickoff meeting, we talked about their goals, core values, target audience, and the client repeatedly said that they wanted their brand to communicate confidence, strength, power, the energy that's gained through better health, the excitement of having ownership of your health. They wanted their clients to feel inspired and really have fun with nutrition and get a sense of play with their lifestyle changes. When it came time to talk about design aesthetic, the client shared a mood board that they had put together that was full of logos that express the polar opposite of these things. Things like delicate flowers, thin line art yoga poses, calm, cool colors, thin, quiet fonts. It felt very serene and soft and relaxing, and it was a beautiful aesthetic, but it was quite the opposite of everything that they had just told me they wanted to communicate in their design. So I brought this up. I told them that thin, delicate artwork and soft, pale colors are associated with calm and relaxation and peace, and if they wanted to communicate confidence and strength and power and play, we should consider brighter colors and a bolder aesthetic. And you know what? The client agreed. Now, I could have taken their mood board and designed their branding in the aesthetic that they showed me, that they personally liked, but that would have been doing their business a disservice because they hired me to guide them towards the best design solution to attract their target audience and communicate the right message. It was important for us to have that conversation, and by having that initial strategy meeting and having that conversation early before I started any design, that also prevented me from suggesting design options that they weren't happy with and having to explain and win them over later, or creating design that just downright didn't fit their business. So hopefully you can pull from these examples to help you navigate feedback with your design clients. Remember, the client has a right to an opinion. At the end of the day, you're designing for their business. A project is not successful if the client isn't happy because you wouldn't listen to their ideas. At the same time, you are the design expert. It's your job to make recommendations and explain the why behind them and collaborate and compromise with your clients. As a reminder, please do sign up for my free 5-day email series, Freelance Essentials, at the link in the description below to get 5 tips, one a day, about working better with your clients and building a more fulfilling design business. If you have questions about navigating client feedback or your brand or web design process, please do leave them in a comment below, and please hit subscribe to be notified of future videos here on YouTube. See you next time.